Hey, Shawna. So it really hurts when I bend my knees deep and do a squat. So should I just avoid that completely?
Well, our guest today, Dr. Matt Frankel, has a lot to say about movement and pain. He is a former gym owner, a CrossFit Games athlete, Division One athlete. He experienced a lot of pain in his life, and he went on to become a chiropractor and has developed practical and easy ways for our listeners to get moving and live more healthily.
I can't wait for our listeners to hear all of this practical and easy to do advice. And before we dive in, I want to give a shout out to our Girls Talk Healthy Aging listener, Miss Dorothy Blackwell. Thanks for listening. Now let's dive in. Welcome to the Girls Talk Healthy Aging podcast, where we dive deep into pressing health and fitness issues facing aging women. I'm Alli Kerr.
And I'm Shawna Kaminski. And together we'll bring candid conversations, expert advice, and personal stories that will inspire and empower you on your own wellness journey.
Dr. Frankel, I'm so happy to have you on the podcast. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate being invited.
Well, I've been watching and following you on Instagram, and that's how I found you. And I'm just so impressed with all the accessible ways you teach for to alleviate pain, to strengthen. So we thought you would be we have a lot of listeners that could use your insight. So before we kind of dive into that, maybe you could tell us a little bit about your background, what led you to specialize in helping people overcome particularly hip and back pain.
Yeah, so I'm a chiropractor by my most recent training, and when people think of that, they think cracking bones and necks and back, but that's very little about what chiropractic is and what we do and what I do. But my background is as a health and wellness expert. I owned a gym for 11 years. I've trained people of all ages, from 5-year-olds to 95-year-olds. For a long time, I used the method CrossFit was my gym. I entered into the space of health and wellness even before that. When I was young, I was a heavier teenager, and I started figuring out health and nutrition and exercise at 13 years old, 11, 12, 13 years old. So, that means I've only been in fitness for 10 years because I'm 23. But I've been around a lot of things. I've had my own battles with my own health and fitness. Being heavier, I played Division One football, was close to 300 pounds, and was like done with that. I had health issues. I didn't like the way my body felt, looked, and performed. And so I lost weight. I threw the shot put in college and stuff as well. So I have the athletic background, but I ran marathons. I lost tons of weight, put weight on, and had no pain, had tons of it, had injuries, dislocated shoulder. So I've been through a lot of different athletic things and health and wellness endeavors, and helped a lot of people with those. But I ended up more kind of focusing on hip and back pain, not necessarily intentionally, but I had really bad hip and back pain. I would drive every weekend for 3 or 4 hours one way, spend the weekend with my family, and then drive back to where I was, and having to do that for 3 months. And those drives would be awful. It would be excruciating. I'd be wiggling around in my seat, trying to get comfortable for 3 hours, feel pain down my leg. Maybe it's sciatica, maybe not. All that. So I felt it, and I've lived it. I've lived with the limitations of having that. I've had episodes come on at different periods of my life. So I just started sharing my experience of that this is what worked. And I say I kind of like hate the word worked, because worked can be, it helped me, and then it didn't, and then it did, and then it didn't. And it's like, for me, I would say this is what cemented recovery. This is what cemented improvement. And so I just started kind of sharing some of that stuff, because it's not what people think it is. And so it kind of took off from just sharing a couple of things, and how I've been on a roller coaster of doing it on social media.
One question I have, Dr. Frankel, is about back pain in particular. Is that something that most of us or all of us are going to deal with at some point? Or is it something that's avoidable? Or kind of tell us, how common is it?
Yeah, it's one of the most common conditions, pains, aches, ailments, if not the most. And I think that pain is inevitable. Suffering is not, because pain is multifactorial. Pain is not just one thing. So the reason for it has to be understood. And most people don't understand the reason, and even doctors don't understand the reason. And maybe it's just my lens. But have you ever heard the phrase, "You're a pain in my neck"?
Yeah.
Like, what are we talking about with that? It's not a physical car accident thing. Like, we're usually talking about some stressful somebody who actually makes our neck hurt. Well, that happens in our back and multiple places in our body. So pain isn't always a physical breakdown or a physical injury. It can be a stress center emotionally. And so there are lots of there's lots of evidence to show that as well. But people know it in their daily lives. They say it all the time. I hold my stress in my hips, back, neck. So it is back pain inevitable for all of us from a physical reason? No. But is back pain inevitable for all of us overall? No, I don't think so. But understanding, like, pain isn't necessarily a bad thing in my mind. It's a warning sign. It's pay attention inside now. That's what pain is. And so something is going on. Your body's trying to get you aware of it and to change some condition. And eventually either the body will get your attention, you'll do something, or it will get used to it and modify how it has to exist, because the body is so smart it does that automatically. And that can cause
we tend to ignore it. We tend to push it aside when we have pain, especially, I mean, Shawna and I deal a lot with women, and we definitely see this with women taking care of other people and not paying attention to, or not, I mean, the pain is there, but finding ways to just, I can't worry about that right now.
Totally. Yeah, 100%. 100%. It's the pay later effect. I'll push it off now, but I'll pay for it later. And yeah, it's super common, especially with females who care about others and have that nature within them. I mean, I think females probably more so than males. Males are kind of like whatever, but females are doing it because they're busy taking care of other people a lot of the time. You're right. So, and there's multiple reasons. Like, what I see patients all the time and talk to people who say, "Yeah, my mother went into the hospital. It's been a stressful time. My body just feels like a mess." Stuff like that. And it has nothing to do. Were you in a car accident? Did you fall? What happened? No, it just hurts.
Yeah, we just had Tyler Cruz on the podcast, and he talked about I can't remember, some kind of bucket, a pain bucket that you keep adding to, and then you might not be experiencing a physical injury, but then something shows up. And so then identifying what that something is and not just taking ibuprofen or ignoring it. So how do you help your patients identify, because and you probably experienced this as a coach before as well, because sometimes your work is not necessarily like teaching someone how to squat. It's teaching someone to go to bed earlier, or like to take care of other aspects of their life that might be causing them pain. So that's maybe a fine line for you to walk as a chiropractor. How do you manage that?
Well, it is. I mean, I think I try to think of what can I do to have the biggest impact on this person, and in moments and overall. And my experience is, in different settings, people are going to be more apt to take information in differently. So, how many times have we heard about the person who's overweight being told they need to lose weight? Eventually that becomes annoying, frustrating, and you end up blocking it out, and you go, I know, and it's like, So what's the purpose of that? What's the purpose of someone coming into my office who's maybe who's overweight and me saying like, you know, the answer to this is you lose weight? I'm not going to tell them that every time. I'm going to go over some basics at the beginning and maybe drip some crumbs about information and say, are you interested in info? And I think about my role and how I can help people, because the truth is, if there are 10 people out my waiting room, which there never is because we run an efficient office, but if there are 10 people out there, I can't take 30 minutes with this person because they deserve my time just as well as this person. And so, hey, if you're interested in weight loss, let's have a conversation at another time, and let's actually dig into this and figure out what actually needs, you know, as weight loss is the thing, or stress. But you know, there are simple moments when I'm like, I work on people's jaw a lot. I adjust their jaw, which has a magical effect for people. And I'll explain that if you like. But for folks, I talk about like, do you grind your teeth? Do you have TMJ? Do you wear a mouth guard? Do you, all these things? And it's these quick conversations, and like, that can be kind of crumbs about how to move forward, like, you know, the mouse chasing the cheese. Because lifestyle, we probably know, it is the most important thing, but it's also the thing that people are most anchored to. And nowadays, so many people are so busy and going so much and have so much demand that there's rarely room to add anything.
Yeah.
Most people have to delete something, and most people don't know how to do it. How do I take away this or that? It could be easy enough to not put something on a plate, but if someone has a habit, routine, a lifestyle that demands them to be up at 6 a.m. and a lot of people either have to get to the bottom, they have to have they have to hurt enough, they have to be overweight enough, they have to something enough for there to be that moment of like, okay, I'm done, or okay, change.
Well, that's one of the reasons, maybe, to me, it looks like this is why you use bands a lot, because one of your latest videos was you in your office, sitting at your office chair with a band to exercise. So you're trying to make things accessible. Look, I know you're at work, but if you could take 2 minutes to do this, maybe, am I right there?
Well, yeah, I kind of, there's you can go outside and you can walk, you know, if you're in a big office park, or you're in a one room office solo, you do what you're doing right now, you're walking on a treadmill. So yeah, I think everybody has the idea and understanding that exercise is accessible, but they don't have the idea of what to do. It's like, yeah, I know I can do something anywhere. Okay, here's this. Now, the personal responsibility is, well, am I actually going to do something? Am I actually going to do it? But yeah, the video you're talking about was to, yeah, I'm in my office and you can do things sitting down, and you didn't really say it in the video, but there's a lot of benefit to doing the things sitting down. So the bands are, yeah, like I said, they're accessible, but there's something better about the bands that for me that I found, which is the way that they actually work is different than a weight. And it's different than body weight. So we can move our body freely like we do all day long, and, you know, do like this with our arms or squat up and down in lunges, but we're only working against gravity. So then if we add let's hold a jug of milk, that adds a couple of pounds. Well, the same couple of pounds is the same couple of pounds against gravity if we're here or here. It's just like the bowling ball. If you drop it from a big tower, it moves the same as a little marble. Gravity's gravity. But with a band, the farther I pull it, the harder it is. So with the band exercises, there's actually increasing resistance as I go farther. So with some of my movements, I'm trying to move my body in a long distance. It's one of the best things for our body is to move in a long distance and not be restricted in our motion. And then when we add the band, the beginning of it is very easy, but then it's more difficult as we get to those ends of the distances. And so that creates more resistance at those points. And that's one of the biggest benefits of the band is it's just called accommodating resistance, is that it changes as we go and accommodates to the distance that we go. So if we move a long distance with a bigger restraint on the pressure. It makes our muscles work harder. It makes our body work differently. And the best point about moving the full distance is that the joints get healthier that way. Because first the movement and then the muscles at the end of those distances, it's called end range training. And that's how we get strong.
And then where it's the hardest, it's also the hardest for the eccentric contraction as well.
Bingo. Yeah.
Maybe you could explain that a little bit too, why that is important.
Yeah. So,
and explain what bands are, what we mean when we're talking about these bands, because some people may not know what we're talking about.
yeah, it's a good point. So bands are these rubber bands. Should I grab one? I have one like right there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So the people that are watching this on YouTube will be able to see. And then if you're not, I'm sure Dr. Frankel explain what he has.
Exercise bands, there's lots of different kinds, but these are the ones that I use. They're rubber.
Sure.
They're 12
Round
inch.
circles band.
Yeah,
They're round
loops.
circle loops.
Yeah. Also known as loop bands or resistance bands or exercise bands. There are ones that are much longer. And I also use those, but they're a little different. And then there are ones that are made of felt or different materials, but I choose these rubber ones, and they do rip and tear. And yeah, I get another pair for a couple of bucks. And but they stretch with the resistance, and there's different resistance levels. Like this is very, very light. It can stretch a lot with a little bit of pressure. This is medium, and then there's heavy resistance. It's harder. And so these are the bands we're talking about. And when we like taking our arm for a minute, for example, like if I were to do this, let's say I'm picking up a bag of groceries and holding it up here. That's called concentric, is the big fancy word, but I'm thinking of like concentrating my arm, that thinker pose, the thinking man.
Contracting the muscle.
Squeezing. Yeah, and you feel tightness. And it feels like it's a tight squeeze, like if you're flexing your muscles. And that can be really good for muscles, but another thing that can be really good for muscles is if you had that big bag of groceries and you slowly let it down, it's another way to strengthen the muscle through the opposite distance, because the one distance is up, the other distance is down, and so the muscle responds to the new distance and the different strain against it. Because it's kind of like I'm trying to pull up against gravity, now I'm trying to not let gravity win. And so it just makes the body work a bit differently. And those bands do that. So if we were using a band, we would have that same effect, and we would also have the effect of accommodating resistance, which is that it gets harder as we go farther. So kind of multi benefits all in one.
Yeah, and they're inexpensive. They're easy to travel with. The easiest one is generally not everyone can use the easiest one, but you can work up from the easiest one to there's some pretty thick bands that you can be getting some heavy work with the heavier bands as well. A lot of the videos I don't see you using like super strong bands. You have a range though. Yeah,
most of the stuff, for me, I always kind of looked down upon bands because my background was CrossFit, and I competed in CrossFit, and so I wanted to work out in ways that strained my body to the max. Now I do a different style of exercise now, not bad, and it's not a bad thing to do that, but I have some personal opinions about the way to do it best for people. But the way that I choose to use bands is for some movements very controlled and through a very big distance. And then other movements, it might be a big distance too, but it's a different demand and I do it faster. And it doesn't mean like there's a certain set speed that someone has to go at or anything. Fast is different for everybody. But the kind of reason that I used bands is that for me, when I was for my own hip and back pain, when I had my most kind of like recent bout a couple of years ago, I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm going to try to do some mobility, like at the time, just mobility, the big buzzword. And so I just started doing stuff that I would find online, and then things started to click. And then I was like, ooh, okay. And I was like, let me just try doing it with this, because I could only work out at home for a little while. And I started using the bands. I was like, oh, wow, that made a change. That was different. I need more of that. And then so I started incorporating them more. And I had gone to PTs and done dry needling and blah and all these things. And it was like, I can target the areas that I have problems with. Oh, wow, these problems are tons of people's problems. Let me see if these are my patients' problems too. Yeah, this is the majority of my patients' problems too. Huh, there's something behind this. And then I started.
One thing I see with bands with clients, and I would love to hear your take on this, is and I have some ladies that are just, they're go-getters, let's say. And so if they see a band, they want the heaviest band no matter what the exercise is. They want to grab the hardest band. Can you speak to that as far as like what is appropriate when you're using bands as far as band selection and the movement?
Yeah. Let's go. Let's find the heaviest and hardest one we can do, and turn ourselves into a puddle of sweat and and effort. I used to do that all the time. That was how I got to where I was. I would not be aware of my compensations.
Yes.
And
what do you mean by that, Dr. Frankel?
What's that?
I said yes. And what do you mean by that?
Our body is so smart that if we choose to do a task, it will likely accomplish the task however it needs to be done without thinking twice. And we'll say, I did it. I did the lunge. I did the squat.
I got from A to Z. I moved from here to here.
Yeah, I got the thing done, but my body did. It's almost like I consider it kind of like a phone number. Well, most people don't know this, but to move your arm, it takes something like 27 muscles all at once to coordinate. So think of that as a 27-digit phone number. If one of those digits is off, you're not getting to the right person. It has to be in line. It has to be right. Now, we don't have to, it doesn't have to, for healthy longevity without wearing things down over time, those 27 muscles need to work in the right order and fashion. Same thing goes for our back, for our hips. One of the most complex physiologic and mathematical things is just twisting and bending down to lift something up. The amount of things that need to stretch and tighten and move and bend and be in unison is like astronomical. It's one of like physics' most wildest things. So we don't have to have pain to have compensation. And sometimes compensation, thank God they did happen, because they probably saved us from having more massive pain or more massive damage. But it doesn't mean that it should remain and sustain. It may have had served its purpose, and now it's not serving a purpose because now it's wearing down something else. So the compensation, for example, that I see a lot with active people and not active people, is that their hips and glutes don't have the right amount of range of motion in different positions. They don't have the flexibility, but then they also don't have the muscle ability in those ranges of motion, because their body's kind of forgotten how to do it, because we didn't do it. If you don't use it, you lose it. So we've kind of forgotten about how to do it. And so the way we move in our life is just full of compensations. So I'll grab the heaviest band, let's go, but my body's going, let's go. And I'm doing the thing, and the body's like, oh yeah, let's just get it done. And using this set of muscles instead of this, I'm leaning this way, didn't even know about it, and maybe it looks perfect. Maybe that form is great, but I hear it all the time. Squeeze your glutes, squeeze your glutes. The person's like, I am. And it's like, no, you're clearly not. Like, I can see it. You can tell when someone's doing it right. But also, most people don't know how to feel. So the biggest bands may get you the most amount of, Apple points on your watch, but it won't get the compensations that are creating this wearing down effect and then breaking down effect to correct. You'll feel great about the workout, but you'll feel terrible in your day.
So I think what you're saying in some instances is less is more. So grab the lighter band if you can do it without compensations. And sometimes you need that coach to maybe check your form. to make sure, hey, I am using my glutes or whatever muscle you're trying to target, because you could be using a heavier band, but as you say, not hitting the mark.
Yeah, and I would say go slower.
Yeah.
So there's so many ways that you can make something more difficult, and it's called tempo training. So if all I had was this light band, I could make a great workout out of it. I would go super slow and super far. And
Yeah.
so I would increase the distance and make it so that every move would be this slow movement this way, feeling what I'm supposed to feel, and a slow movement back to where I'm supposed to feel. So if I'm always grabbing the heavy band, hey, let's have a new challenge today. Your body will thank you because we're going to mix it up.
Yeah. Yeah. All different training stimuli, it's not just something heavier. It could be timing. It could be exercise. Maybe start at the end of your workout and work backwards. There's so many different training stimuli that you can be using.
Mm-hmm.
I want to talk a little bit about the idea of keeping moving, because I think many people just think it hurts, I need to go sit down. What is wrong with that?
Well, if you put water into a freezer, what happens to it? Hardens, turns to ice, freezes. And our body will literally do that, have that same effect. It will, it will lock up, it will freeze in place. Why do people who get a hip replacement have to move right after they wake up? I mean, there's a lot of reasons, but part of it is that movement is medicine. So the body does so many. We have this internal doctor, this internal pharmacy, if you will, of that we have all these hormones and things that come out and repair tissue and help our bodies live and sustain and do these processes on the inside without us thinking about it. But movement enhances all that stuff. And so if we sit, these processes they don't go away, they don't get dormant, they don't stop, but they're not as powerful. And so people talk about like the endorphin effect from exercise and runner's high and all those things. And it's like, yes, it doesn't take running a marathon to feel those, but your body will release these important substrates and things within the body that will help it heal. Bigger is that when we're in pain, the idea might be to rest. And there might be some cases when that's needed, post-surgical things, and but there's still movement pretty quickly after most surgeries. If there's an incision, we need to let that actually heal. But on the inside, people kind of throw out the term like arthritis as the thing that is like the reason that they don't move. But the answer to arthritis is movement. That is the straight up answer. You will have that icing effect without it. And so in order to lubricate a joint, it has to be moved. And the bigger part that happens is the brain recognizes movement. And there are areas when there's movement being restored, the brain recognizes it and it does something completely different and healthier than with non-movement. So yeah. Even with pain, there has to be ways that you can stay active, working around the situation, or with it, or through it. Because the truth is that when you get your ACL repaired, it hurts the first time you go into rehab. But then you start to be able to bend your knee, and then you're able to walk. But then you want to start running, and you have to level up the rehab, and it hurts.
Yeah.
But then it stops. But then you want to sprint and jump and go to and all of those other things. And each time you get to this new level, it hurts, but then it goes away. And there's no guarantee that movement is going to make it go away. But also, if it's not a destructive process, if it's not breaking something down more, you have pain, is it livable?
Yeah.
Is it something you can live with for the benefits of the movement that your whole body's going to get?
So it's kind of that fine dance of pushing a little bit, testing, how does it feel? How does it feel during? How does it feel later? And then modifying after that. I think especially for those people that are not versed in movement, having a coach or someone guide them, especially through a painful rehab or process, or finding the reason why. For example, we've all had clients with knee pain. So how can we work legs to develop muscle to support the knee? Because not squatting is not an option unless you want to pee standing up or stand up for the rest of your life. So let's strengthen the glutes. Let's do hip hinging movements that can strengthen the legs. So or if your knee is injured, you still can train your upper body. So the motion is lotion idea is we have to keep moving. So it's really important for us to hear from you as well, that you don't just go sit down.
No, it's not. It's not a go rest it. And there are times like, yeah, you've done your exercise. Now go rest it and ice it and put it up. But rest, ice, compression, elevation, rice, like it's proven. Wrong method. Completely wrong method. It's actually like meat, movement, exercise, attention, and training is actually the right one. Rice versus meat. But there's actually a brain effect too. That, I mean, I had dislocated this surgery. I learned this way later, but I kept exercising. I was like, there's no way I'm going to stop doing it. I was doing CrossFit, and I'm like, I'm still doing one arm stuff and riding a bike with one hand and running and with an arm in my, I remember this, with my arm in my sling. And I'm like, whatever, I don't really care. I can do stuff.
Reciprocal.
Well, there's this brain effect. It's a crossover effect that if you train the other side, you maintain muscle mass on the injured side.
Mm-hmm.
So you're far more, your recovery is going to be far better, far faster if you do something. And even if you're not injured and you just have pain, you're still going to maintain much more life ability. And I think really what all this comes down to is like, why would you even exercise? I don't think people have the real reason. Like you said, there may not be a reason, but there will become a reason when you can't do something. There will become a reason when you can't sit on the floor and play with your grandkids. And there will become a reason when you're in a wheelchair and you don't want to be. And most people can't see that far down the road, but it's coming. And there might have to be that wake up. Yeah.
And as we age, it's coming faster than you think. And then all of a sudden you can't do something. And then it's like, wait a minute, when did that happen? It's like, okay, but when did you get down on the floor the last time? Because people don't get up and down off the floor, and then they try and then they can't.
That's one of the biggest things that I put into my programs with people is crawling. I put crawling into, and it's not like day one we're crawling, but it's exactly it. If you don't use it, you lose it. And then you pay a much larger price, which is enjoyment of your life. And the things that you want to do, you just can't. I mean, my dad is in his latter 70s, and like he feels like he's 50. Now, it doesn't mean that his body is 50, but he's like, who is this man in the mirror? I want to be active. I want to do these things, and my body sometimes doesn't keep up. And mentally, it can be a real strain. And I'm like, I just turned 40, and I'm like, okay, many of my counterparts and colleagues, like, they're hurting. And I'm like, what do you mean? I mean, I know you are. Of course you are, because you're one of the, sadly, typical Americans. But you cannot escape aging, but you can escape feeling old.
I also want to say for the listener that is there, that, hey, I've lost a lot, that you can get it back. For example, I have a client who's 75. She had polio as a child, so she has a very weak leg. And we've been working, and she can now stand unassisted on her weak leg. And this is at 75. So it's not all lost. The best time to start was 20 years ago, but the next best time is now.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Totally agree. 100%.
And what about weak hips, Dr. Frankel? How does that relate to back? Just how to explain a little bit about one thing connects to another, and how that can affect pain or damage.
Yeah, I think one thing is really important is pain is not the only thing to pay attention to, because someone can have a paper cut and have a ton of pain, tons of pain. Well, someone else, take Navy SEALs, they get shot and they don't feel anything. Take the normal person, they get a bruise in the arm, they don't know it, and someone's like, "Whoa, what's that bruise?" And you're like, "Oh, I don't know. Didn't even know that happened." But damage happened to the body. And so damage is happening at all times, and our body is either able to clean it up or not. But there can be internal damage. It's kind of like a heart attack. Like the damage is happening, and then all of a sudden, boom, event. So I think one of the signs when it comes to that type of thing is loss of movement. I can't sit down as easily. I can't get on the floor. I can't reach over my head. It's harder for me to, my arms don't straighten. All these kinds of losses of movement are signs of damage. They don't have to be pain, but that's what it is. And so when it comes to hips and lower back and knees, I mean, the hips are a center point of our body, and they are such a dynamic joint, meaning like they're a ball and socket joint, and they do all these different movements. And so the body has to be strong to accommodate those movements. When we don't move in certain ways, the things that were supposed to move it stop doing their function. Then the rest of the body has to accommodate to that. And whatever pressure the body was supposed to have in that area gets displaced to another area. So for example, in the hips, when the hips stop moving correctly into rotation movements, which many people don't do anymore because we sit, we walk, we sit again, that we lose the flexibility there and we lose the strength there. But the body's still going to get the pressure from walking in daily life and gravity alone. And that pressure is going to get handed off to the back. It's got to go somewhere. Or it's going to go downstream to the knee like a waterfall. But what I see a lot of is changes in the back, especially in folks who are older. And even younger now, is degenerative change, degenerative disc disease, all those types of terms. Many people say it's normal. I don't think so. Because if it was normal, it would be on every bone. There's typical areas, like why would there be just this degeneration right there? Well, if you have a sandcastle and half of it is in the water and getting crashed on by waves, that's breaking down. The other side is fine. It's not getting hit by the waves. So on an x-ray, degenerative disc, degenerative change, is like, why is it just there? Well, let's see where the movement is deficient. And many times in the lower back, it's deficient in the hips, because the hips were supposed to be the support structure underneath the back. And when that support went out, then the back had to support itself. And so a lot of problems can happen from that, because because of lifestyle, as well as just those physiologic changes, the body changing and adapting, muscles will squeeze and kind of condense. Bones will start to change and squeeze. Areas that weren't supposed to get a lot of pressure, and areas that weren't supposed to give it off. And so I think when it comes to the hips and lower back, a lot of people, I think, that sometimes miss the mark that we focus on the lower back because that's the symptom. But it's coming from the hip. Or it's coming from the thoracic spine up above it. I see that a lot too. It's achy down here in my SI joint, that big word. It's from a trigger point in your upper back because you've been slouching for 30 years and you don't have any muscle that's controlled and gravity's pulling you down. So a trigger point develops. And when I push on it, you feel it here. I see it all the time. And the glutes and the hips. So the idea of like things being connected is that it's truly all connected. And people, it's so connected that a foot problem can create a neck problem.
Because you see a lot of patients and you understand maybe a little bit about their lifestyle, you're probably seeing similar lifestyle habits that result in repetitive use, like a forward head lean. So similarly, Mrs. Jones and Mr. Smith might have similar symptoms because of similar lifestyle habits. So a lot of times these things are related simply to lifestyle and maybe improper movement habits.
Yeah, very much so. And Lifestyle habits are one of the biggest things, because the most amount of time that we spend in our life is sleeping and working. So if we sleep on our stomach, it's terrible. It's absolutely terrible for us. Your neck is cocked to one side. Your area in your spine is just under such pressure. Usually people's leg is up in a weird position too. So one hip is in one rotation, the other is in another rotation, and our body gets accommodated to that, and then it can't do the opposite. So we try to do the opposite, like, oh, it hurts. Well, no wonder. I mean, you've been standing like this for 20 years, and now I'm going to ask you to stand like this, and it hurts. But the pain's not the problem. We need to do it anyways. So the problem sometimes with symptoms is that people are going to have varying symptoms, all from the same problem. So someone can have an issue at L4, L4, L5, L5, S1. One person has sciatica, but one person has hip achiness. Sciatica would be like burning and sharp pain down the leg, past the knee, typically to the shin or to the foot. And so some of your listeners may have experienced that. It can be awful. And that can be coming from a nerve in the lower back at L4, L5, L5, S1, those lower back areas. But someone else with the same problem at L4, L5, L5, S1 can have it only in their butt. It could be the sharp pain that's in their hip, or it can be achy like a toothache, but it's still the same area. So it does take somebody to understand what are the possibilities that could actually be going on, and where is the strain stress. But in my viewpoint is, okay, there's a problem there. Why is it there? Why did L4, L5 break down? And why only on that side? Well, let's look at your hip. Oh, look, your hip doesn't rotate and move the normal way as the other one did, or vice versa. And so there's a breakdown. And I've coined these terms. There's a wear down effect, because the thing was wearing down because this wasn't going on. Your hips weren't working. And then it leads to a breakdown. But then people get stuck in this symptom, and what's the root cause and treatment? It's this root and symptom cycle where they never really get into the root cause, but it's a lot of symptom cycle, which can be so frustrating for people, because it just hurts and then it goes away, but then it comes back, and then it goes away and it comes back, and surgeries.
Yeah, and I think the key is to not lose the thread. Keep pulling on the thread until you find a solution. And I want to bring up another potential solution that people might not consider, that may be causing joint pain or other pain, and that is their nutrition. Can you talk a little bit about how that nutrition can contribute to pain or pain relief?
Yeah, for sure. A high inflammatory diet is going to lead to more destruction within the body. So it's kind of like the soup that our body is in. If the soup is at the right temperature, has the right ingredients, everything's going to be fine. But if it's at the wrong temperature, if it's boiling hot, and you put ingredients in there, it's going to be trouble. So what we eat and consume, we all kind of know that in terms of our blood work and cholesterol and triglycerides, but it carries over into the things that our body feels and how it breaks down or it doesn't. So it's just like putting gas into the car. If we want the gas has to get to the engine and be used, and it has to go through some tubes and things like that. And if the gas is low quality, it's going to break down those tubes, and it's going to break down the engine. So maybe the tube is a muscle, maybe the tube is a joint. And well, we've got a high amount of inflammatory diet, and our body is, you can think about it as like the wrong soup. It can wear down, it can cause mayhem in the body. And so pain, and especially in terms of pain, there can be, people know this for liver, pancreatitis and liver problems, that if you have pancreatitis, you may have physical pain in your lower back. And that's not to scare any listeners, but it's a common thing, and it's right around. There's special tests that can be done to figure that out. Very simple, but physical pain can come from a breakdown of an organ, and so it's anything. It doesn't have to be just the pancreas. It doesn't have to be just the liver, but you can have physical pains from these breakdowns from nutritional effects, because we ate poorly over a long period of time. One meal here and there and all that. I mean, we're not talking about that, but my experience, most people say, I eat well and I eat healthy, and they actually look at what they're eating, and It's trash, just straight up. But not even like, I don't even want to be like, I don't care to be nice about it because I need to tell the truth. Like, you may be thinking it's healthy. Someone lied to you. I'm going to tell you the truth because you need to hear it. And there's so many resources out there, but low inflammation is linked to longer life, longevity, and that's not just, low inflammation comes from a lot of different things. But what do we have the most of? We consume a lot of food, and so there's a lot of chances to promote health or to take it away.
And that's I'm in Georgia in the South, surely the Southern, we eat a lot of fat and fried food and eat out a lot. And so, yeah, the nutrition is definitely something that we maybe have a lot of confusion about, maybe don't understand. Could you be a little bit specific about what are some things maybe that are good for anti-inflammation that people can eat?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is regulating blood sugar. That is the biggest thing. So people are like, don't eat any sugar. Like that would be like, okay, great. Rule one, eat less sugar. Look at labels. Look at the food. If it has a label, look on the back of it and just read. Does it? And one line says added sugar under carbohydrates. And if it has any added sugar, don't eat it or eat less of it. That's the biggest thing. But in terms of what to actually eat, it's simple. Eat meat, eat vegetables, eat fruits, eat whole grains in some amounts. Don't make them the main thing on the plate, but eat them. Have healthy fat sources, make those more main. The biggest thing on the plate should be vegetables. The most amount that you eat, and it's almost unlimited. And in my experience, I eat kind of a gross amount of vegetables. Like every meal I'm having vegetables, and I'm going to fill up on vegetables and then eat protein and fat. So, and I eat a lot.
Now, we even fry vegetables here in Georgia, and I know you're in South Carolina now, so I'm sure you know this.
Yeah,
and we think that well, fried chicken, that's a meat. Fried okra, that's a vegetable.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
Or covered in butter. Like when we get food at restaurants, we don't realize what all is actually on or in that food.
But if we're making good choices, I consider that majoring in the minors. If we're going to restaurants, let's say we ate out every meal, but we were eating out and having like grilled chicken, steak, fish, even pork or something like that. I'm not a big fan of pork, but and vegetables on the side, and then a side helping of rice or a white potato or sweet potato if they have it. If that was what people ate, and sure, it's cooked in seed oils and those things, we're going to be okay. We're majoring in the minors if we're like, can you cook it in avocado oil? I mean, it's fine if you want to go to that level, I think, but the reality is people don't make those food choices at most restaurants. So, if it's okra, fried okra or collard greens, take the collard greens. And I'm not going to worry about the butter or the oil. I'm just like, I'm just not going to have the fried okra. It's got bacon in it, pancetta. That's okay. All right, no big deal. All right, but what about the beer we're going to drink or the wine? We're going to have 2 or 3 of those. How about we just have 1 of those or none at all? We're having a Coke or a Sprite. Diet. So, those types of things, I think I agree. Like there's a lot of, definitely living in the South, I've seen a different take than in the Northeast. But it's all about choices. And so I think that some people may use that as a mask a little bit. It's like you can go out to eat and you can eat. You can go out to eat every meal and you can lose weight and you can be healthy. But I think one of the biggest tricks and kind of hacks is to eat vegetables first, because it's about regulating blood sugar. So blood sugar it's kind of like a colander that you strain spaghetti in. So if we were to have, let's say we're eating a healthy dinner, and a healthy dinner of chicken and broccoli and a potato, and I eat the potato first. Well, the potato our body breaks that down into little parts and pieces, and it breaks it into sugar. And that sugar is going to go through the colander really quickly. It's just going to fall right through the holes. But if you eat the vegetable first, it's kind of like putting paper towel in the colander. And so then you put the sugar in, and it doesn't go through as fast. It kind of seeps through. So the vegetable first actually is this buffer for blood sugar. And so even if it's not a healthy thing, let's say we're going out for ice cream, whatever, have a carrot stick or a piece of celery before you do, and it actually makes your body act completely differently than if you didn't. And it's just this stupid, like, quick little thing that no one really thinks about. It's like 5 calories for a stick of celery, and it actually has a big blood sugar effect. And if you do that over a long enough time, it actually matters. And so I think nutritionally, it's kind of small, boring habits that end up becoming big results, and it's compounding interest. But I think vegetables are probably the thing, like, and we'll call it unfried vegetables, probably the biggest thing that people can do that will actually make a big health impact.
I like how you've made it accessible rather than saying don't. You're saying do. If you're having the ice cream, have some vegetables, or eat your vegetables first and then have. And it is the small habits over time that make the difference. I think it's the people that try and make sweeping changes that are unsustainable. So even if a listener decides, I want to move better, I'm going to just start. One thing that I can do is I'm going to start eating more vegetables. You might find that you have less inflammation, and then you can actually do that 10-minute walk with less pain. So that could be a starting point. If someone just had 10 minutes, if someone could find 10 minutes for themselves, and they want to improve their mobility and pain-free movement, what would you recommend?
I would recommend the process would be work on hip, find the areas of motion in the hips that are most challenging to do, and start to try to do them gently. So for example, if it's hard to cross one leg up over the other while sitting, start to try to do that. Get into that position, use your hand as assistance, and gently stretch that area. But stretching is not the answer only. There's range of motion that needs to be increased, and then the strength in that range of motion needs to be increased. So 10 minutes, I'm going to find the areas that are, I'm super stiff when I do fill in the blank. Go do fill in the blank. And then we need to strengthen fill in the blank. So it's kind of a range of motion increase, and then a strength increase, and then using it productively. And so, for example, like if we're doing that sitting in the chair idea, a lot of people do this stretch where they sit in the chair, they cross their leg over, and they push their knee down because their knee is stuck up towards the ceiling. And it usually never gets better after the course of many years. It's just, I'm just tight and I can't sit on the floor crisscross applesauce. So, okay, we're going to sit in the chair and we're going to gently push that knee down 10 to 15 times. Then we're going to do something that's called the hip external rotation. But really, it's kind of like, okay, my leg doesn't bend this way. I'm going to try to strengthen it that way. So we put a band around the leg. For example, put a band around that leg, and we're going to try to strengthen our hips and glutes. I put it like one of the simplest moves is if I was sitting, I'd put a band around both knees, so my feet would go through it, and then it would go up to about my knees. If I imagine these are my knees, and then I would push my knees to the sides and stretch the band, and that would strengthen my glute hip external rotators. And then I would want to use it, get up and move a little bit. But when I squat down, it's kind of tough too. Okay, let's do some mini squats and then put the band around my knees and do that same thing again. So in 10 minutes, you could accomplish that for 2 or 3 areas and feel much better, and eventually end up healing those compensations, getting rid of them.
So for someone that's not in South Carolina, my recommendation is to first go to your Instagram, start following along with some of your at-home exercises with the bands. I know you also have maybe a free booklet that is accessible through, so people can get a free booklet from you to start to help with some of those weaknesses. Do you work with anybody virtually or just in person?
Yeah, I work with people all over the world now. I mean, I've had so many people inquire, and I've figured out a system where I can do things virtually, and I watch people move, and I have them do certain things. And for so many people, it's uh, they've never had it looked at in the way that I'm looking at it, because they're like my back pain, so they've always looked at the back, but I'm looking at the hip. And they, after the first session, it's like, whoa, they can touch the floor, they can move, they can bend. And so, okay, we figure out the right thing. And if I can't help somebody, then I just tell them, like, listen, here's where I would go, and I would tell them to look at this. It's clearly not this. It might be that, and that's not my specialty. So I want you to you go over there and have them look at that. But I work with people all over the place, like Australia, New Zealand, and Spain and stuff. So yeah, some people, if anybody's interested, they can look at my Instagram. That there are 4 or 5 free guides. But I work with people and do a free assessment at first to make sure that I can help people. And I have some new programs that that are going to be more generalized. But I think for the best thing for anybody who's dealing with something isn't to guess. I think guessing, there is a time and experience cost that you don't get back. You don't get to go back to the 3rd roller skating birthday party. Like, it's over. And if you can't do it, sorry, you missed out. And so working with somebody who the grandchild's, picking up the grandchild, like my kids are 8 and under, thankfully 8 to 5, but I'm like, oh, I wish I could go back to when they were 2 and hold that little baby. And I won't get that time. We don't get those moments back. So yeah, there might be a financial cost to working with somebody, but the speed that you'll improve at is so much faster if it's the right person, and it'll be far worth it because you'll get to experience the stuff. And I see it's kind of like scratch ticket exercises where, you get a scratch ticket and you're like 9 times out of 10 you're losing, but you get that one that worked. And so if you find that one exercise that worked because you picked it, you might be like, great, that worked, but all the rest don't. So working with somebody who can actually help, it's worth it.
Well, I think people don't consider the cost of not taking action because they're looking at the cost of action. Maybe it's 10 minutes a day, maybe there's a financial cost, but there's the cost of not taking action or helping themselves. And that's what you're talking about, losing the time.
I have a question about the jaw. So, like, what is the thing with the jaw? So you mentioned the jaw being a big thing that you see that needs addressing.
Yeah. So compensations and how everything is connected. So people stress and they clench their teeth, right? And they grind their teeth down. Well, when that happens, a lot of muscles in the face get overworked. People wake up, there's tension and tightness, and then there's headaches. My head hurts here, but I can push here and I can create a headache here. I can push here and create a headache here. And so, well, going down that track, what a lot of people do is they say, well, I have a mouth guard. Well, that just protects you from not turning your teeth into dust. It doesn't do anything about why they're clenching. But there's a cycle that's going on. It's usually a emotional cycle of strain, of stress, emotional stress. But the clenching pattern and pain pattern in the jaw needs to be broken. And also that if you do this hard enough, if you clench your jaw hard enough, the back of your neck will tighten. Because it's an opposite. That in order to clench the jaw, something has to cinch the head down so that the jaw can do its job. And so just mechanically, the muscles right here in the back of the head, right at the bottom, squeeze so that the skull sits there and then the jaw can do its thing. So people who have this like rigid, stuck like area in their neck, there's always this like, well, it feels like I'm touching a rock. Do you have jaw issues? Yeah, I've clenched my teeth since I was 12. I've grounded my teeth, blah, blah, blah. It clicks and it pops. It doesn't hurt though, but it's dysfunction, not a normal functioning jaw, which creates a non-functioning neck. And that pain might be in the neck. But that's not the problem. The problem is the dysfunctioning jaw. And until the jaw has some type of intervention, the neck is going to be painful.
Mhm.
So I work on people's muscles in their mouth. A lot of people will get Botox injections, but with Botox, it paralyzes the muscle. So the muscle doesn't work, but the function has to continue. So something has to pick up the slack. So something else is going to grow more because it's doing more reps. That's not a good thing for balance in the head and the neck. And then what the head and the neck, what it leads to, a lot of people who have ear infections also have jaw issues. I mean, what's next to it? A lot of stuff. Tinnitus too. A lot of maybe probably your listeners may struggle with tinnitus, and that can be an upper neck problem, and it can be a jaw problem. So what I work on muscles in the jaw to try to release tension there using a technique called active release technique. But I also adjust the jaw because it breaks that cycle of clench. Now, if the reason the clench continues is an emotional piece or strain, like it will come back. But when I adjust, I mean, just today, there's a couple of people I adjusted and they, oh my God, finally that tension is gone. Yeah.
If you had a wish for our listeners today, what would it be, Dr. Frankel?
I'd have a list, but it would be that they wouldn't be afraid of pain. They wouldn't use it as their motivating factor to do or not do something, and that they'd be proactive in preserving their life and getting the most out of it. We've got one, and it's a shame to let it waste.
My wish would be that we pick one food or drink that may be causing or increasing inflammation and work on a way to start replacing that with something that is less inflammatory.
That's a good one. Yeah, and mine is to keep pulling that thread. If you have unresolved pain, consider the cost of not addressing it. I have the gift of age, and had I, if I didn't address pain all along the way, I know that I wouldn't be as mobile as I am today. And I'm so thankful. I'm thanking my former self for pulling that thread. So I encourage people, if you are in pain, there can be an answer. And Dr. Frankel, you might be it. So we will have all your information in the show notes for our listeners. And feel free to reach out to Dr. Frankel.
Definitely happy to help.
Thanks for listening. You'll find me, Alli, on Instagram at Alli Kerr Fitness.
And you'll find me, Shawna, on Instagram at Shawna Kaminski. Feel free to pop us a DM with questions and or feedback. If you're enjoying the Girls Talk Healthy Aging podcast, please subscribe and share it with other health-minded women. Ratings and reviews are also much appreciated and help us get our message out to a larger audience.
Until next time, be healthy and be happy.